Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about someone really cool. A guy who looked up at the same stars you see at night, but he saw something totally different.
So let's jump in our time machine and go way, way back. We're going to meet a kid who asked some seriously big questions. Questions that, believe it or not, changed everything. All right, so here we are, over 400 years ago, in a place called Pisa, Italy. This is where our story starts, with a super curious kid named Galileo Galilei. He was born way back in 1564, during a really awesome artsy time called the Renaissance.
You know, Galileo's dad was a musician, so Galileo grew up around music, learning about cool patterns and rhythms, but what he really loved to do was ask why, all the time. He wasn't the kind of kid who was okay with a simple answer. Nope, he wanted to know how everything, and I mean everything, actually worked.
So get this, his parents wanted him to be a doctor. But in class, he was totally daydreaming about math and how things move. He was just so fascinated by, the secret instruction manual for the universe.
Okay, so one day he's just sitting there, maybe a little bored, watching a big lamp swing back and forth, and he notices something amazing. Whether it was a tiny swing or a huge one, it always took the exact same amount of time to go back and forth. That little discovery about the pendulum, it was a huge deal. It actually helped people later on invent way, way better clocks. But Galileo wasn't just about asking questions. Oh no, he was all about testing the answers. And he was about to take on a huge idea, something that pretty much everyone on Earth had believed for, forever. So for thousands of years, people just assumed something. What do you think would happen if you dropped a super heavy cannonball and a much lighter one at the same time? Which one hits the ground first? Most people would say the heavy one, right? It just feels right. But Galileo? He thought, is that really true? And this is the cool part. He didn't just write down his ideas. He decided to show everybody. The story goes that he went all the way up the famous Leaning Tower of Pisa. He took two balls, one heavy, one light, and he dropped them. And can you guess what happened? They hit the ground at the exact same time. Boom! He proved that you can't just believe something, you have to test it to see if it's true.
All right, so Galileo's brain was already working overtime, but his curiosity was about to get a serious power-up. So in 1609, he hears about this new invention, kind of like a spyglass, that makes faraway things look closer. Now, he didn't invent it himself, but he did what he does best. He made it better, way better. And then he did something that no one had ever really done before. He took his super-powered spyglass and pointed it up at the stars. This is just a perfect example of how a new tool can unlock a whole new world. That telescope was like a key, and it opened a secret door to the universe. And what Galileo saw through that door, well, it was about to blow everyone's minds. Okay, what he saw was just wow. First off, the moon. Everyone thought it was this perfect, smooth, shiny ball. Wrong. It was covered in mountains and craters, just like Earth. And then he looked at the planet Jupiter and saw, get this, 4 little moons orbiting around it. That was huge. If things were circling Jupiter, then that meant not everything was circling the Earth. So naturally, Galileo was super excited. He wanted to tell everyone what he saw. But, well, not everyone was thrilled. His amazing discoveries actually started a really big fight, because they didn't match what people had believed for a very, very long time. So here's the deal. For hundreds of years, the really powerful church taught that the Earth was the center of the entire universe. And everything, the sun, the planets, circled around us. But what Galileo saw through his telescope, it looked a lot more like a different idea from a guy named Copernicus who thought the sun was in the center, and we were the ones doing the circling. Galileo even wrote a whole book explaining what he thought was happening up there. But this was seen as a really big deal. It looked like he was telling the church they were wrong, and for that, he got into a lot of trouble. In 1633, they actually put him on trial just for his scientific ideas. Yeah, he was accused of something called heresy, which is a fancy word for going against the official rules. And his punishment? He was put on house arrest for the rest of his life. That meant he couldn't leave his own house. He was a prisoner. But you know what? You can lock up a person, but you can't lock up a curious mind.
He never stopped thinking, never stopped studying, never stopped asking questions. And even though they tried to silence him, Galileo's ideas were just too big, too important. It was like he lit a spark, and that spark just kept growing into a huge fire that inspired scientists for generations to come. One of his other awesome ideas was something called inertia. It sounds complicated, but it's not. It's just the idea that if you roll a toy car, it's going to keep rolling until something stops it, like the rug or your foot. That simple little rule was a super important clue for the next science superstar, a dude named Isaac Newton. Seriously, think about it like this. You can draw a direct line from Galileo pointing that first telescope at the sky to Isaac Newton figuring out the laws of motion, all the way to astronauts landing on the moon in 1969. It's all connected. The questions Galileo asked are literally why we can travel in space today. It's just amazing. 400 years later, we still call him the father of modern science. And you know why? Because he taught us the most important lesson of all. Science isn't about just believing things. It's about looking for yourself, testing your ideas, and always, always asking questions. So Galileo's story is a reminder that there are so many awesome mysteries out there waiting to be solved. He changed the whole world just by being curious. So my question for you is, what are you curious about? What will you discover?